Heading into the inauguration of Donald Trump, it seems that he's going to remain a profoundly ignorant, petulant bully. President Trump will be the same as candidate Trump, even if he's probably going to break every promise he made on the campaign trail. So, how did this happen? How did a man who had a 55% unfavorability rating on election day get elected? Now, some of these issues are uniquely American. For example, Hillary Clinton gained 3 million more votes than Trump, but thanks to the electoral college system, he got elected. There were issues of racism, of sexism, of Russian hacking, and FBI interference. But there are two issues I feel aren't being widely discussed, and these two issues I think will also affect us in the New Zealand 2017 election, so I wanted to talk about them. I want to talk about them in two separate videos. Today I wanted to talk about neoliberalism. Now, neoliberalism or free market economics or laissez-faire capitalism or trickle-down economics really boomed in the 1980s, particularly under the leadership of Margaret Thatcher in the UK and Ronald Reagan in the US. Here in New Zealand, it came to us primarily under Minister of Finance Roger Douglas, who subsequently founded the ACT Party. At its core, laissez-faire capitalism, neoliberalism, is about deregulating business, reducing taxes, and in some ways reducing social spending. The idea being that with less taxes, less interference, the markets will boom, the economy will expand, and everyone will benefit. Hence, trickle-down economics. And for 30 years, this has been pretty much the unquestioned nature and philosophy of global economics. The only problem is it doesn't work. The rich, particularly corporations, took that money and they kept it. With less revenue, social infrastructure and social spending had to be cut. Then, when people became dissatisfied with this, the rich were able to channel that money they had gained into PR campaigns to manipulate voters and to lobbying or directly bribing politicians. In addition to this, with less regulation, we saw more things like economic crashes or oil spills. And when these things happened, the government had to foot the bill. In essence, corporations had found a way to privatize the profits and socialize the losses. The rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And it's not just me saying this. The International Monetary Fund, which for decades pushed these ideas of neoliberalism onto developing countries, has recently admitted that it actually increases inequality. Now, in the US, this continued up until the present day. First under George H.W. Bush, then under Bill Clinton, particularly in free trade policies. Then under George W. Bush, who created large tax cuts for the rich, which then Obama made permanent. The trouble with this is that it wasn't just the leaders in the White House, it was leaders throughout their system. And because bribery is pretty much inbuilt into the current US political system, you saw an increasing lack of correlation between what the public wanted and laws and what corporations wanted in laws. There was something called the Princeton study, which showed pretty much there's no correlation whatsoever between what the public wants and what laws will be passed, but there is a direct correlation between what corporations and lobbyists want and what laws will be passed. Even worse, within the US, there wasn't really much of a choice. They're in a two-party system. So you could either vote for the party that completely supported neoliberalism and was accepting bribes, or the party that accepted neoliberalism slightly less and was accepting bribes. And coming into the present, Hillary Clinton was seen as the face of this, the face of corporate connections, of legalized bribery in the system, of failed neoliberalism. So when Bernie Sanders exploded in the primaries, it was because he was addressing these issues: inequality, corruption, wages, and trade deals. But despite the fact that he got 43% of the primary vote, once Hillary Clinton was the nominee, she almost completely ignored these concerns. In fact, their philosophy was to move further towards the right and to gain Republican voters more than to address the concerns of their own constituents. People wanted these things addressed, and Donald Trump addressed them. In a time when people were unhappy, Hillary Clinton was telling them everything was fine. Donald Trump was telling them what they wanted to hear. And he won. Despite being a vulgar, narcissistic, ignorant bully, despite insulting almost everyone, despite bragging about sexual assault, despite parading his comedic stupidity and petty vindictiveness on a daily basis, he won. And largely this was because he talked about issues that people wanted to hear. Now, was he lying? Almost certainly. Donald Trump's statements connect with the truth on an almost entirely random basis, and his cabinet of billionaire businessmen and a Congress of heartless hypocrites are set to gut regulations and taxes, loot the treasury, and dismantle social services like health and education and social welfare. But I wanted to bring this back to New Zealand. Now, we've been following these neoliberal policies since the 1980s. Sometimes we've had the brakes on under a Labour government, sometimes we've had the brakes off under a national government. We're in the third term of a government that reduced taxes on the rich, increased taxes like GST that disproportionately affect the poor, has deregulated businesses, and reduced spending or not kept up with spending on things like health and education. Our children are poorer, our rivers are dirtier, and corporations are using loopholes to pay a pittance of tax on the huge profits that they're making. So to political parties who are out there trying to oppose the current government, you have two choices. You can tie yourself to the sinking ship of neoliberalism, a system that does not work. You can say, vote for us, we're not quite as bad as the other people. You can try the strategy of Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, and you can see how well that will work for you. Or you could take a stand. You could actually admit the failings of neoliberalism. You could look back to a time when the top paid their fair share, the bottom was looked after, and we cared more about people and society than we did about profits. Because continuing what we're doing is not the worst thing that can happen. If you don't think Donald Trump can happen in New Zealand, you are wrong. The US thought Donald Trump couldn't happen, and now it has happened, and they are going to suffer, and the world is going to suffer because of that ignorance, because of that mistaken assumption. When people are unhappy, when they feel disenfranchised, they turn to a populist. They turn to someone who addresses those concerns. And this can be someone who genuinely listens to the people, who addresses their concerns, who understands their worries, and who tries to help make their lives better and our nation better. Or it can be a person like Donald Trump. Take care and be heard.